Hello to everyone checking out the Platinum Mask YouTube channel. I'm Grayson Mask. I have with me Tammy Thomas, who's a local DFW actress, filmmaker, writer, and producer. And she kind of goes back and forth between Atlanta and the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But this was kind of a conversation that honestly just popped up. Kind of saw her on a couple of local DFW blog posts and saw kind of some of her recent timepiece films that she not just was able to write, but also be an actress in and be able to produce and finance. So I thought that was just kind of an interesting conversation on, what it is like to juggle so many different hats for kind of a film project. So thank you again, Tammy, for, not just being able to take out the time today to be able to talk about these projects, but really just kind of talk about your background and what led into it.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Grayson. And I am, as you stated, I am an actress, producer, writer. I wear all the hats, so many of them, as a lot of us do in this industry. And I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas, to a single parent. And I grew up in the area. I did my church plays. I did church plays at my church when I was younger. My mom, first of all, used to read to me when I was a little girl. She would read every night before bed. She would read to me. And of course, that was part of the thing that sparked my imagination. And so that made me always love to play dress up and of course, take the brush like a lot of little kids do and sing in the mirror. And I was a big fan of Little Orphan Annie. And so that was one of my inspirations. And I started auditioning and getting cast in a few plays around Dallas. I started off, of course, with community theater, and then it turned to paid work. And so I was very excited about that. I gotten cast for several, the Theater Arlington, and then there was Soul Rep Theater, Pegasus Theater, Dallas Theater Center. So, I had done a lot of work here in Dallas, and I felt like it was time to expand and then move on. And so I moved to New York and I booked a couple of gigs. I lived in Brooklyn. I got an apartment in Brooklyn, and so booked a couple of gigs, learned a lot from my experience. I was there for 2 years, and then I moved on back home. I wrote my first feature film and shot that, and I was on fire from there.
I was kind of wondering, when you originally started off in Dallas, specifically, you're kind of talking about early on going into plays and then spinning that off into kind of indie films. Was it, I guess, is like finding gigs like maybe a little more competitive or difficult when it comes to like the theater world versus, I guess in your experience, like the indie films?
Ooh, absolutely. Finding work in this industry, period, is very tough and it is very competitive. And I know for African American women, there were not a lot of roles available for us anyway. And so with theater, there would be an audition and it would be a role for one African American woman. So all of the Black women in Dallas would be at the audition for that one role, vying for that one role. But it was a great thing because we got to sit in the waiting room and get to know each other. And that's where we would talk. That's where we would find out about what we're doing and where it was. And we went to each other's plays. We went to each other's film premieres and we supported each other. And so from there, I would see a lot of those same people branch off and create their own theater companies or their own production companies and start writing and producing their own plays and indie films. And so that's part of what inspired me to do so. And one of those companies was Soul Rep Theater. I was cast in several plays with them. They would do their annual new play festival, which they still do. But I know that was so much fun for me. And so that was also something that inspired me greatly. And then there was Kelly Gray Bobineau. She also was very inspirational for me because she cast me in her first feature film in a lead role. And so I saw where she did that. Of course, she had partners, but she also, it turns out, I starred in her production, and then she turned around and she was producing, and helping. She was a UPM for my feature film. and she's been a UPM for all of them, really, to be quite honest. With my short films, she did, and as well as my feature films. So, that was just a blessing to have that. That led to so many connections. So while it was very competitive, it was also inspirational, and it was also it drove us, to create, and it drove me to create. And so just about everybody who I was auditioning with now they're running their own film-based or theater-based company in some way, shape, or form. And so, including myself. So, the competition was there, but we also were able to create work for others as well.
When you kind of like talk about like, I guess pulling, the positives out of that type of competition, when it came to like the actual, your move to Brooklyn or to New York in general to explore new opportunities, were you, I guess looking back, were you happy that you chose that specific time period after that amount of experience to go to New York? Or do you think possibly it would have been different if you went like straight to New York, or maybe waited with more experience when it came to, I guess, like the time?
You know what? That's a good question you ask. And listen, I moved to New York in 2010. And so that's after I'd had a lot under my belt. And so when you move to a new city, anybody can attest to this. When you move to a new city, you're the new kid on the block. And therefore, you have to reestablish yourself. You have to build yourself up from the ground. Well, you have to build yourself from the ground up. And that's what I had to do in New York. So, I mean, your question is, do I feel like it was the right time? Yes. I always feel like, yes, it was the right time. I mean, because I learned what I learned. I may not have gotten the amount of work that I wanted, but again, it was all a learning experience. I can put any experience, every experience that I've had, even if it wasn't a great experience, or even if it was a downright bad experience, I turned it into a positive because I learned from it. And I learned that, that saying, don't burn bridges. That's one of the sayings that now I can't really stand, because you can't burn a bridge that you never had to cross in the first place. And so that's what I learned. Some bridges are not worth trying to cross again, because you really don't necessarily want to go and, go that route anymore. You know what I mean? So all of it was a great experience. The New York, the timing and everything was right. The timing was right. And to learn what I learned, and then take what I learned, bring it back home, and then apply it, and make sure that our Dallas talent had work to do. Because I'm proud to say that, I didn't create tons of jobs, but, I did create some jobs. I called my friends to play. That's what I do when I write screenplays. I have people in mind that I want for it, and I call them up and say, hey, let's play. And a lot of times they say yes, and then you have some that say, no.
With like, with involving your friends in this type of process, is there ever like any type of moments where I guess it's difficult to separate or include like the friendship with like with the creative passion, or actually creating a final, solid product? Is there ever any time where you possibly are, mixing the two?
Yes, I definitely mix the two, because I tend to write things more so geared toward that person's personality and what they're really like. They don't have to do I said that to say they don't have to do a lot of acting once they come in and do what I've written for them, because like I said, I write pretty much around what their natural personality is, and I just kind of enhance it and take it to the hill. I'm not I am not a slave to one genre. I write for all genres. So there's comedy, drama, sci-fi, horror. I've written a horror film. I'm about to write another one here, in the process of writing another one here. So different genres, and I have different people in mind, and I just go with that and run with it. And, as far as the friendship, we have so much fun on the set, and they have so much fun doing it. And anytime, they're feeling a certain way about a line and saying, hey, can I maybe change this line to this? You know what I'm saying? I totally respect that. And, most of the time, I'm not necessarily married to anything verbatim. I'll just say, hey, yeah, take it. Do what you do with it, Give me whatever you have. Bring that creative. I love for people to bring their creative flair to it, instead of telling people to do something exactly the way it is. And I don't a lot of times direct my projects anyway, because that is very hard to do. Okay, it's very hard to direct something that you're in front of the camera for. And so most of the time, someone else directs the films, our films. They're not just my films; they're our films.
Like on the writing process, when you kind of touched up on like the idea of kind of writing it for your friends, and you're not, I guess, specifically married to an idea, and it possibly changes over time.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any like characters you can think of in any of your films that maybe started one way when you wrote it, but possibly changed a lot by the end based on kind of the actors or actresses like projections or what they thought?
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? That's good that you ask that too, because that happens a lot more than you think it happens. And I know I have one way in my mind, but what I love is that a lot of times, and like I said, I work with a lot of my friends and I work with a lot of people that I know, and a lot of times they will bring something to it totally different that I didn't think of. And when they do it, I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't think about that. That was very brilliant, the way that actor or actress, delivered that line. I wasn't thinking about it that way, but they had a different way of thinking about it, and it just worked. And so yeah, that happens all the time. And I don't like to be controlling. I don't like to be one of those micromanagers to where, no, don't do it like this, do it like this. Now, every now and again, when I have a vision, it is a vision, and I want to stick to that vision. But a lot of times, I'm going to say 85% of the time, I have to go ahead and let the actor or actress do his or her thing with it.
And I guess on that relationship between like directing and being an actor or actress, and I guess like back to like when you kind of like mentioned in New York about even like the bad experiences being being able to learn from those.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of wondering, like, when it comes to the bad experiences, is it normally more there were bad experiences because of the professional aspect, like maybe there wasn't good chemistry between certain people, or is it more of a bad experience because of the creative aspects, like the final product wasn't I guess what you originally expected or wanted to do?
Yes and yes. There are always, you're always going to have, especially when you're working with so many people on a set. I know with my first film, we had, check this out, 19 speaking roles. That's a lot of people and a lot of personalities that you're going to have to deal with, plus the crew. That does not include the crew. There was 19 speaking parts, and then you had the crew. And so there are bound to be personality conflicts and issues, and I don't like to dwell on that. I mean, because it happens, it is what it is. And so, you have to deal with it and move on and do the professional thing, what you have to do to get the film done. But, it's just one of those things. And it, again, is a learning experience. You take the negative and you turn it into a positive, and you keep it moving. And you cannot let one stumble just continue to let you give up or fail at it. You have to keep it moving. And so, yeah, you do have those personality clashes, and yeah, you sometimes you do, but you make it work. You get lemons. What do? You make lemonade.
And like on, I guess like on that idea of being able to learn from those type of moments, kind of originally, like when I saw that you wore all the hats on kind of these, different film projects, was there like a certain component, whether it was the directing, the writing, the acting, the financing, that maybe started off a little rocky, that maybe grew the most over time, or you notice like you notice like the most growth you had?
Oh Lord, every area starts out difficult from the writing, because what happens is, I know one of my mentors that I had, and he was a consulting producer for my first two films. He told me that I would always let him read my films, but I was always very careful about who I shared it with anyway, because you have to be careful with that kind of thing. Of course, there's always the issue of copyright infringement, or possible plagiarism. And so I was very careful about who I let read my scripts, and it's your baby. And so what he would always tell me was, write every aspect of the film and don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about if you don't have a car, or don't worry about if you don't have a set design or set pieces. Write every aspect and things will fall into place. So that was one of the most difficult, so many of it was difficult. The financing, financing is next to impossible when you're trying to ask investors to do it. However, it is very possible when you're doing it yourself. And that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, is that I have, and it's not just me by myself, so I don't like to use but a company, EDEWEMESEY, because that's my production company. I, along with my partner, Bob Carter, but finance all of my films. I know Paradise House was made with $20,000. Well, I'm sorry, it was under $20,000. And The Rings That Bind Us was made with $30,000, and I'm very proud of that, but it was not easy. And I did seek the help of investors, and all of them said no. People take a gamble at it a lot of times. And I didn't even really seek investors. What I did was create a sponsorship package, and I was asking for sponsorships, and they all said no to that too. But you're even more proud when you're able to make the sacrifices and save that money and put it into a film. And I will tell you that there were sacrifices made, but when you do that, I mean, it's a lot more doable, and it's a lot more attainable than what you think. I mean, I did not get my hair done. I didn't get my nails done. I didn't eat out. I did my grocery shopping. I made sure that I didn't go over a certain amount a week. I cooked at home. I had garage sales to save up for that. I did side jobs, extra jobs to, save the money to do this. And I will tell you a story. I wrote The Rings That Bind Us in 2017. I'm sorry, in 2016. And I ended up moving here to Atlanta. But I always knew I would still make it. And I always knew it was going to be in Dallas, because I had all my actors and actresses that I wanted. They were in Dallas. I wanted this. I was bound and determined to make it a homegrown production with homegrown talent. But I got a job here, and I moved out here to Atlanta. Well, my car broke down, and the whole engine blew out. So I ended up having to get a new vehicle, and most of my savings went into putting a down payment on a new car, because I didn't want a large payment. So I depleted my savings and had to start all over again. But I never gave up, and I knew that it would happen. It was just going to take a little more time than what I thought it would. So the financing, it is what it is. A lot of people, they don't want to put their money into something that is not MGM Studios. You know what I'm saying? What's another one? One of the big ones, Paramount Pictures, or Marvel. They don't want to put their money into someone who's not Marvel. You know what I'm saying? So you really have to go. And if you can't invest in yourself, then why would you expect anyone else to invest in you? So I just sucked it up and said, hey, that's fine. I'll save up the money and do everything that I need to do to save it up and make it happen. And, the rest is history. Very proud of that too. And I have got wonderful friends. I've got a wonderful production crew. Well, I've got a couple of production crews that can make they can turn they can make $1 out of 10 cents. They make these productions look like $1 million productions. And so I was very proud.
No, I was kind of wanting to ask on like that production aspect because I remember like with your previous projects and the projects you're working on, with them being like period pieces. On like limited budget, I would have assumed trying to do a period piece or something outside of current day would be more difficult. Was there like any?
Oh. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, a period piece. Did I let you finish your question? I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish your question.
I was no, I was waiting for a great reaction, but no, I was just gonna ask on if there's any specific I guess aspects of the film that were you were most surprised about when it came to like stretching the dollar.
Oh, I don't know about surprised, because I have always had a very vivid, very wild, very big imagination. I've always thought big, and I've always been very colorful with, with decorating and, wanting things to, making sure that my home represented me and my personality. And so with a set, I brought it to the set, and see, with every movie, I want to make sure every movie that I make is better than the last. And so with The Rings That Bind Us, I wanted to make sure that the set design was on point. And so with this period piece, really had to. Now, I wrote it in 2016, and I started buying furniture in 2016. You should have seen my house in Dallas. It looked like we were in a time warp. And so I knew that there was a lot of planning that had to go along with this, and there was going to be that issue of recreating the period in a 2020 or 2021 world. You know what I'm saying? On a shoestring budget. So I knew that I was going to have to do a lot of searching. I knew that I was going to have to do a lot of vintage shopping. I knew that I was going to have to make sure I had room in the truck to pick up anything I saw on the street on the way from where I was coming from. I know I would be coming home from church, in my church nice outfit. And I'd pick up some furniture and get it stained, but I didn't care. If I saw it on the street, I'd pick up some furniture, throw it in the back of the truck. That'd be perfect, because you're not going to see it next time you go by there, right? So I know I had to make sure that I got it. So yes, there were definitely those elements of surprise, and there was a scene that we filmed here that we had to go and make it look like an office back in the 70s, of course, because it's a 70s movie. So we had to use, instead of real wood paneling, we had to go and get some wood paneling wallpaper, and it looked exactly like the wood paneling. We had to, make sure that we were able to find different couches. Like I said, we make trips out to Watauga, Texas, to get things we needed, furniture, pieces, and whatnot. Those little paddle boards that they had back then, and all those things. All of those elements are in the movie, and very proud of that. Oh, and television sets, needed 3 of them, right? And so I ended up. It was a hard find, but we ended up finding 3 vintage television sets to work with it. And I know one location we had and ended up falling through. And so at the very last minute, and I'm talking about the night before, we had to get everything, move it to my house in Dallas, decorate that the morning of the shoot, with everything. And we were hustling too, hustling with that. But I remember having to do that, and we made it work. So, yeah.
And was there kind of, when you kind of talked about like those period pieces, like with The Rings That Bind Us, was there like a timepiece or a period piece that was like more difficult than the other? I guess, would it be like the older a guy, like the more difficult it was going to be to set it up?
I didn't find it more difficult, because again, if you don't have $1 million, or if you don't have if you don't have the finances to do so, it is going to be a little more difficult, and it is going to be a little more challenging to find those pieces. But what you have to do when you have creativity and resourcefulness on your side, you can move mountains. And that's what we had. And so it wasn't more difficult from the 50s to the 70s. It's just, it was one of those things where you really had to work hard and you had to have an eye. And you also my job every morning was to get up and get on that internet and search for those pieces. And once I searched for it, because of course I still had my job, and so I worked from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. in the morning, Central Time. And so once I got off at 9 a.m., if I found that piece in Irving, I had to drive and go get that in Irving, to make sure that I had it, because it was the perfect piece. It was exactly what we needed to create that time period. So I didn't find it more difficult. It just, I knew that I had to make it happen.
And like on kind of the different roles you had in these films, and I remember kind of saying like, we kind of covered with some of the acting and the other projects you've done. I remember saying like, on one of the parts in the DFW area that you're also, was it a traffic reporter and everything?
Yes. I've been a traffic reporter for 22 years now. So that is something that, I'm telling my age now. But I've been doing that for 22 years, and the acting was even before that, because I started acting at 8 years old. And I was doing school plays, I was doing church plays, I was doing community theater. Like I said, it turned into paid gigs, and then that turned into a gig on Walker, Texas Ranger, Prison Break. So I was doing all of this before I ever even got on radio, but I always loved radio, and I wanted to be a traffic reporter when I was in high school. I'll never forget, I heard the traffic in the helicopter, and I was listening to one of the popular stations in Dallas, and I remember saying, I want to do that. And I remember thinking, I can do that, because I always loved to use my voice. So I ended up going to the American Broadcasting School and graduating from there 2 weeks shy of graduation. Well, I actually had, I sent, back then you sent your audition tape. You sent your audition demo tape. They didn't have the, over the internet at that point. So you mail the tape in to the program director. And so what I did was called Metro Traffic. It was Metro Traffic at the time. And I left a message, right? I left a message on the program director's voicemail or answering machine at the time. So to my surprise, because nobody had called me back, but to my surprise, he called back. And so he said, "Hi, may I speak with Tammy Thomas, please?" I said, "This is she." And he said, "Hi, what can I do for you?" And I said, "Well, I was just calling to see, because in broadcasting school, they teach you never ask if you can send them, but where I need to send you one, what is your address? Where do I send it?" And so I asked that question, and then he said, and I quote, "Well, can you just bring it by?" And so I just went bananas, because I had never had anything like that happen to me before. I was 21 and I'd never had anything like that happen to me before. And so I said, absolutely, I can do that. No, I'm sorry. I was 24 at the time, but I'd never had anything like that happen to me before ever. And I said, absolutely. So he scheduled an interview for me the next day. Unbeknownst to me, not only was it an interview, but it was a sound check, or it was an air test. Yeah, an air test. And so he had me to go into another room, record myself doing a traffic report. Once I came out, he said, okay. He gave me a stack of paperwork this thick, and I was hired. I will never forget that. And that was one of the greatest moments of my life. I was so excited. And when I tell you, I jumped up and down, I called everybody. I called all my family. I called everybody I knew when I got that job. So that was something else that I absolutely loved doing in addition to the acting. And that's something that I was able to do in addition to the acting. Because, some people, because I waited tables, and it's not that I didn't like waiting tables. It's just, it was not my passion, you know, but radio was also my passion. And so I am grateful that I was able to do the radio and I was able to do the acting, which were both two of my two passions I have, present tense.
One question I had about like, I guess being in really just kind of that the fact that you've been able to work in so many different fields, from the radio to the broadcasting to these various acting gigs, and you kind of mentioned some of the TV show projects as well. I was kind of wondering, like, is the idea of, I guess, being like typecasted ever like an issue where when someone's like coming up into acting, when they're doing projects? Was that like ever like a concern on your end, or is that like never, I guess, something that's brought up?
No, I was fortunate to not ever have that issue of being typecast because I did not allow myself to be typecast. I would, I'd go from an urban role to theater Arlington, where I was playing ditzy, an aerobic instructor, named Chrissy. So I didn't allow myself to get typecast because I never would allow myself to be in a box. And I would always go out for different roles. I wanted to do comedy. I did comedy. I did drama. I did horror. I played a witch, and I played a rat. I played, a bear. Or then I would end up just playing the girl next door. So no, fortunately, being typecast was never an issue for me. I know it is an issue with some, but for me, I didn't have that, fortunately.
Well, to kind of like wrap everything up, I honestly just wanted to ask, specifically if there was any other, projects that you're excited about upcoming for this year, or, anything that you wanted to mention about Rings That Bind Us.
Ooh, yes, The Rings That Bind Us. We are set to release that this summer in July. So very excited about that. And one of the unique things about The Rings That Bind Us, which this is something that I had never done before with anything, this was the first multi-state film. 95% of it was filmed in Dallas. And then the other 5% was filmed here in Atlanta. And we had a Dallas crew. That was a 5-man crew. And we had an Atlanta crew, which was a 4-man crew here. So we had the director, we had light, our director of photography, and sound. So we were very proud of that we were able to get this movie, this $1 million movie, with a very limited crew. Now, it was extremely, it was challenging, and we had 18-hour days a lot of times that we worked, and not one member of the cast or crew ever complained about that. Very, very proud of that. And so this is a treat because we've got Yarbrough and Peoples. We have got Shucky Ducky for this. We have got Bob Carter, who is an amazingly talented person. He's also my partner. He's also half of EDEWEMESEY Films, LLC. And he also directed the piece as well as had a starring role in it. We have so many homegrown talent, so much homegrown talent in it. And I was so super thrilled that they all agreed to come on board, and they all did an amazing job, and we all had so much fun with it. So I'm really proud of it. And I know that everyone's going to immensely enjoy this when we have our premiere. And I am definitely going to keep you and everybody else posted on when we have our premiere, because we're going to have a huge Dallas premiere.
No, definitely. Looking forward to, if there's any set date or anything. No, I definitely want to check it out for the premiere and everything. But honestly, outside of that, I wanted to Really just thank you again, Tammy, for not just be able to kind of dive in on talk about some of the projects, but honestly just kind of be able to give a little bit of background and just kind of shed some like different tips to anyone that's possibly looking to follow your footsteps, whether it's into the acting, the writing, the producing. No, I think it's really cool information for anyone, possibly interested.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And a tip that I have, of course, and it's just very simple. You are going to want to give up. Don't.
Dang, gotta end it there for that one.
Yeah.
No, thanks again, Tammy.
Thank you so much, Grace, and you have a wonderful evening.